section at the moment, what's the likelihood that it is actually going to completely sink?
John. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, what we can say in that respect is that this morning suddenly we saw a significant increase in the trim of the aft section, followed by the incident was just explained by the gentlemen in the footage you see behind. We were with the helicopter in front on the forward section, waiting and seeing what was going on. At a certain moment, the vessel completely sunk. We have monitored it then for another 5 minutes. We didn't see any movement anymore in the vessel, and since then we haven't seen any movement further. So we believe that at the moment she is settled, although we cannot guarantee that she is 100% stable. Further assessments during the time have to prove that. But at this stage, since approximately 10 o'clock this morning, the situation is unchanged.
How many containers are still on board?
That's an assessment we have to make. Part of it can only be done as soon as we have access. We cannot look at it, it stays underwater. So the only thing which we can see is what's on top on the decks, in front, it's approximately 100. And an estimate of what is in the forward section and what is in the aft section remaining, we can see that after the inspections, which are planned as soon as the weather will allow this. And at this moment we don't know because the weather forecast till Saturday is not good enough for us.
I think the figure that has been released by Maritime New Zealand, which is an estimate, I understand your question, is that in the aft section that is slowly sinking around 400.
There has not been a significant release of additional containers.
That's been sinking.
Sorry?
What's the plan with it?
With the, well, that can only be determined as soon as we have the inspection on. If we see it stable, if we see that we can have access to it in a safe way. I hope if you see these pictures behind me, you see the enormous wash. If we have now to do some recovery work on the water, the divers have to do that. And with this kind of circumstances, it's completely unsafe for our divers to work there. So we have to take the opportunity. We are ready, we are prepared, we are waiting, and as soon as the weather circumstances will allow, we will be there and just do what we have to do.
Are there any major changes to the weather forecasts, and with that in mind, where the debris and things will wash up?
It's very difficult to predict. I'm here now since Saturday. Before I was here for a month, and what I learned is that the weather forecast here is very difficult to predict. What we have seen on this Sunday, this quick change, and then suddenly this weather which has changed, and this huge swell, it was initially predicted to go down. It didn't. It stayed, and then it was predicted to stay. What we see, this moment is very difficult to predict the weather. Also in the first period, actually, please, we'd like to recall that when the ship broke on the 10th, also then suddenly a huge swell came in, and that was also predicted to go down after 7 o'clock in the evening, which it didn't. So.
I think at one point though, sorry, you were saying debris would wash up from Waihi Beach up to Mercury Bay until Thursday. My colleague said that was the prediction at some point. Has that changed, that specific forecast?
Sorry, I was referring to oil
right,
from Matakana to Matata. That's
still
potential oil impacts.
You might want to talk about what's been done at sea to try and contain it.
As I said, we've got Switzer out, have an asset out there to try and deal with oil as it escapes from the ship, but that's at the wreck site. Obviously, as the oil is drifting away, it is under the influence of the wind and the tide, and as that changes, So we're modelling this all the time. We do a flyover, we model and see where it goes. The indications at the moment are that it's going to go to, as I say, impact Motiti, and then from Makatu to Matata. But as the Minister said, the quantities we're talking about are not huge at this stage.
In regards to the container debris, what is the forecast trajectory of that? Is it still Waihi to Coromandel?
For the containers is where they are now, so the original release, it will stay where they are, so on the northwest. For further release, the trajectory has shown that it will follow a similar pattern to the oil and will go to the southern side of it, the same as the oil.
I was expecting a significant number of new containers to be released today after the events this morning. The advice we've had is that there's been confirmed sightings of 2 additional containers released since the sinking.
Paul, it's a question that everyone's asking. Not far back off the Australod Reef, it sinks to about 80 metres. Let's say the wreckage slips down that below surface. How on God's green and blue earth do you possibly remove containers and then, as Jerry said yesterday, the wreckage has to come out of the water? How do you do that? What is the process of doing that?
Again, that's something we can only decide after we've done our inspections. At the moment it will be guessing. We have to change our plans. Basically we have the Borneo still here, and if we can pull containers we will. The rest is just a matter of new inspections, new planning, new discussions and what's.
Do you actually cut the ship up underwater, or do you try and raise the ship, or how do you, what's the actual process?
At the moment we can't say anything.
You can't do anything, so you don't know until you've done that.
We don't know what the situation is, and safety, of course, is our most important thing as well.
Now that the front of the ship, like, you know, it's still firmly wedged, now that it's, I guess, completely exposed, is it likely that that may start changing?
Well, we have our sensors on it, so we monitor it all the time. This forward section remained stable, relatively stable during the week that we had this weekend. We don't know when the swell is coming from another direction whether that will change. We've seen small changes to the forward section with respect to damage. You have these swell that is coming in, of course, it's creating huge forces. So also that will be a matter of guessing. I understood the weather is not normal for this period of the year, and it can happen again, and we don't know. We just have to see.
So getting the containers off those forward sections, are you going to go with that?
Sorry, say again?
So getting the containers off that forward section, I know it's a lot shallow water, it's been more difficult. What happens now?
What happens now is, as I said, as soon as the weather settles, we're going to do a depth survey. From that we have to decide how we can position our vessel, the Borneo, and be able to create crane reach over the forward section. At this moment, again, we don't know yet because we haven't done that survey and we can't do the survey, it's too rough out there now.